First appearance of Arthur Conan Doyle's famous detective, Tim Pigott-Smith investigates the case of Sherlock Holmes.
He was tall, slender, clean-shaven, given to long bouts of lethargy and depression, relieved only by cocaine in a 7% solution and the abstracted playing of the fiddle. He had a genial contempt for the police. Of women, children, family, we should not expect or desire his opinion. London fascinated and repelled him. Outwardly, he was ever suave and sophisticated, but he saw a dark side to things. He was in many ways a tortured, as well as a lonely man.
Surely that's not how most people see him.
What a case this has turned out to be. Why has a fictional detective become a mythical hero? Because we pretend to have some of his powers. Do we really know about him? That he's famous in Russia, Japan, and America. Millions recognize this cliché, but where did our hero spring from 100 years ago?
Beaton's Christmas Annual for 1887.
Seasonal reading, quizzes, puzzles, and stories. This one?
A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle.
Only 12 of these left. This is the only one in Europe. Nobody kept them. They fetch as much as £20,000.
£20,000. This was the start of something big.
Conan Doyle created someone who, it quickly transpired, the world has not been able to do without.
The Case of Sherlock Holmes.
This particular man, who comes to us in this first story with all his powers in place, with seemingly nothing left to learn of the world, was to mesmerize his readers in a way no fictional character has quite done since.
Why has Holmes so caught people's imagination in the last 100 years? I mean, nobody now remembers C.J. Hamilton.
Whereas the homage,
if that's the right word,
lavished on Holmes and his world knows no bounds. Scotland Yard call their computer Holmes.
Yeah, mine's called Watson. And you'll never guess where we found our first clue.
This may look like the Baker Street we imagine, but it isn't. It's Liverpool. Baker Street never had a 221B. It's a fictional address. How important is our imagination in appreciating Holmes? It's easy to think of these kids in their torn jeans as Holmes' Baker Street irregulars. As an actor, I've played Holmes, and I became increasingly fascinated by his character. He's so universally appreciated. A pub here in the docks is named after him, and tonight a lively crowd has gathered for a look-alike competition.
Okay, right, it's Sherlock Holmes night. You're having a great time. Listen, it's Sherlock Holmes look-alike time again. Let's hear it for that. Let's hear it for the fellas, Sherlock Holmes look-alike. Okay. And tonight we're very lucky to have the one and only, straight from the force, Detective Superintendent Ken Forshaw. Let's hear it for Ken.
A real policeman judging a clutch of hopeful Holmeses. Such is the power of the Holmes myth that these would-be heroes don't realize they've got him wrong. The deerstalker and the curly pipe were invented long after the books were written.
What's your name, number one? Terry. Oh, very nice. Yes. And what makes you think that Sherlock Holmes is a fantastic detective and you want to really be like him?
Because he's very much like me.
He's very much like you?
He certainly is.
A drug addict?
No.
Anyway, give him a round of applause for Terry. Okay, number 2.
No one in here seems bothered that the contestants don't look anything like Holmes. Aided, of course, by actors' portrayals, we create him in our own image.
Sleuth, and he was a super sleuth.
Have you got your right teeth into
Yeah, I have, just about. Yeah.
What else would you say about Sherlock that's so outstanding that you are the lookalike?
Well, about Sherlock, well, I consider I have the same aquiline features as Basil Rathbone.
Hi, Kevin! Never mind, get in, Watson.
Hier, Mann, durchbohrender Blick, schottische Reisemütze, Scheckpfeife, karierter Mantel und Geigenkasten.
Geigenkasten?
Geigenkasten?
Ja.
Scheckpfeife. Karierten Reisemantel.
Ja.
Da weißt du nicht, wer das ist?
Nein.
Sieht dir ähnlich.
Hast du von dem schon mal was gelesen?
Oui, Holmes, comme si monsieur qui est à l'agonie. Parfait, Holmes. Sirop blanc et tout bleu.
Exact, Watson. Mais il est encore temps de le sauver. Je vais téléphoner.
The Sherlock Holmes craze is becoming bigger, larger, and more encompassing every day. It's 100 years since the first story was published. 200 years from now, I predict it'll even be more popular if we're all here to enjoy it. In fact, the state of the world in 200 years from now will make more people want to enjoy it. I think he's growing because people believe it was a real figure. In a motion picture with a John Wayne movie, The Shooting of Liberty Valance, the editor said, when you have a choice between the facts and the legend, print the legend.
If Sherlock Holmes is sitting here now, first thing I would ask him is, why is he so scared of women? Why did he take cocaine? And where did he get that brain?
I love Sherlock Holmes. I fell in love, I think, when I was 14 years old.
I began reading the stories of Sherlock Holmes when I was about 8 or 9. And then later on in my adolescence, I started trying to emulate what I'd read about Sherlock Holmes. I tried to use his deductive method. And friends of mine at school would set me little problems in the lunch hour and I'd try and solve them. And I got a nickname of Sherlock.
When you start on Holmes, you stumble across the Holmes cult and quickly encounter the idea that Holmes is still alive and that fog swirls and licks at the windows of 221B Baker Street.
When people need something, in this case Holmes, others will provide it. And the whole thing becomes self-feeding. Poor old Conan Doyle can't have realized when he brought him back from the dead that Holmes would live forever. Now, 100 years later, Holmes has, for some, become a way of life.
I've had my eye on you. Even Moriarty couldn't devise anything so fiendishly clever.
What's your subject this time? The Sherlock Holmes stories of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
Holmes, you've only now barely missed sending me to the gallows. You're the one man in England clever enough to defeat me.
2 minutes on the Sherlock Holmes stories. Starting now.
The thousands of letters sent to 221B are answered by me at Abbey National, whose head office shares the famous address.
Dear Mr. Holmes, I often conduct my own experiments after your fashion. It is not as easy as you make it seem. Be successful and stop taking cocaine. Yours admiringly, Tina.
17 points and no prizes. My whole success depends upon a peculiarity of Holmes' brain.
I'm Inspector Holmes of the Metropolitan Police, and there's absolutely no truth in the rumour that Sherlock Holmes was my great-grandfather.
Like a spoiled boy who picks watches to pieces.
Holmes sells Holmes.
The
Irregulars. Correct. Irregulars. Correct.
Sherlock Holmes has helped me to put order into my brain.
My task here today as the world's #1 sleuth is to present my evidence.
I think Sherlock Holmes is like a machine because of the way he works out all the clues.
I've had my eye on you. Yes, you. And you. Ever since you came in. And I can see that you are material witnesses to my case. For my investigations have shown that you are all involved.
If I know Mr. Holmes, that will interest him very little. After this comes still fascinating.
To the woman, Irene Adler. To Holmes' landlady, Mrs. Hudson. To the master, Sherlock Holmes.
To all of us, the adventuresses of Sherlock Holmes.
Hear, hear!
I'd like to explain my passion for Sherlock Holmes. To me, he's out there fighting injustice, solving crimes, and yet maintaining a stable and happy relationship with the world, with himself, and with his partner. And it's a comfort to sit there and forget what's going on outside. Just get lost in Victorian fog and hounds baying and Sussex vampires and stolen letters and naval treaties and what have you. And for half an hour, you forget that it's 1986. You're back in 1886. And that's my passion for Holmes. He's my anchor.
Is that how Watson saw him? Dr. Watson. He's had a pretty raw deal. He was supposed to be 29 when they met. Oh, where's that meeting? Here we are. Dr. Watson, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, said Stamford, introducing us. How are you? He said cordially, gripping my hand with a strength for which I should hardly have given him credit. You have been in Afghanistan, I perceive. But how on earth did you know that? I asked in astonishment. Never mind, said he, chuckling to himself.
Conan Doyle tired of Holmes, preferring to concentrate on historical novels. Only 6 years later, in
The Final Problem,
Watson takes up his pen with a heavy heart to record his companion's death.
Good and evil locked in deadly combat at the Reichenbach Falls.
But when Moriarty finished Holmes off, it was not the end. He came back from the dead as a result of public pressure. Watson fainted.
Well, you would, wouldn't you?
More stories followed, and the way was opened to a timeless legend.
Moriarty. Does anyone remember him? Whatever became of Moriarty?
One loyal group of Holmes supporters remember Moriarty each year. They gather to desecrate his name.
Well, we're on the way to Moriarty once again. This is the 15th time, David.
Yeah, this is my first time, though.
Oh, it is? I thought you'd been here, but you'd been here for the other event.
For the trap shoot. Yeah.
Well, the people down in Moriarty don't realize how great an event this is, because we're celebrating the unhappy birth and probable death of Holmes's villain.
John Bennett Shaw is one of the world's leading Sherlockians. An undertaker by trade, he took early retirement to devote his energy to the Holmes world. Every November, he and other fans from all over America congregate in the one-horse town of Moriarty.
90 days at the Knox County Penal Farm. The sentence comes after Robert completed no contest today to 3 reduced drug charges. It's 108 at WKOB.
The regulars at the Frontier Bar say it's the most exciting event on the year's calendar.
87 issue of Beaton's magazine that the science of detection first burst upon the scene. Woven in a story of vengeance, love, and horror, 'twas the first of the masterful canon of stories some 70. The canon might not have been written if ophthalmology were more of a rage, for patients were slow in coming, and Sir Arthur's payables began to age. So he wrote a study in Scarlet 100 years ago and proceeded to send out copies up and down Publishers Row.
Some of the good old boys and gals missed the point.
Couldn't even understand a word she said.
Well, we
I
all,
sat and
we all get,
listened to her.
we all
Couldn't
get
hear her.
anal ailments.
Anal
We
ailment?
missed
Ailment? Illness?
one other
Huh?
announcement. If you're listening, this is an important announcement.
We're going outside and we're going to deposit the deposits on the deposit site. And we're never going to sing Unhappy Birthday, You Bastard, Moriarty. Bastard was his middle name, named after Thomas Cranmer.
Happy birthday.
Moriarty's denigration by bull, yak, or camel dung seems to be another way of saluting Holmes.
Happy birthday to you.
Deposited right in front of the sign, which is not spelled correctly, but this is old manure. It certainly looks the part, isn't it?
Oh, it's exquisite.
And then we go inside and wash our hands.
Moriarty, what of him?
I've taken the most efficient steps of keeping in touch with Moriarty.
You're having him followed?
Oh, don't be so crude, Watson.
Well, what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing?
My dear Watson, you needn't check me back as if I were an invoice. I said nothing. That's the best thing I can possibly do at the moment. Moriarty is as curious about my movements as I am about his. So I sit here and wait for him to come to me. And he'll come. Never doubt it.
So you fiddle while Rome burns?
You know, it would be so wonderful if Sherlock were young again and we could get him to run for prime minister or president. We need him more than the British need him, I think.
Yes, but he's not native born, though, is he?
No, but he could probably be legitimatized somehow, with surgery or something. I think Holmes appeals to everybody as the Jungians call an archetype. Father Christmas, Mother Earth, John Bull, Uncle Sam, and Sherlock Holmes. He's even a greater archetype than Mickey Mouse. But he's a leader, and this is one of the points I think is very important in this, certainly in this country, in my own milieu, that there are no leaders. Our political people are programmed by advertising agencies, and we've had several presidents that were either obsessively evil or vacant-minded. And we need a leader. Our sports leaders get paid too much. The movie stars are vapid. And again, they're programmed, and pretty soon I think computers will take over, I hope. But Holmes is a leader.
Even in Moscow, Holmes provides for some deep-felt need among people. The stories have long been popular in the Soviet Union, and in recent years a number of films have also been shown. They have made the actor Vasily Livanov, who plays Holmes, as famous as Basil Rathbone in the West. He's now a comfortable star. Do the Russians have different reasons for revering Holmes?
Я думаю, это объясняется той же самой чертой, о которой мы говорили, и той чертой характера, которая обеспечивает Холмсу вечность. Это готовность перейти на помощь. Люди во все времена нуждаются в помощи, а в наше время, в то время, которое мы переживаем, люди особенно в нашем тревожном мире нуждаются в помощи. И такая надежность, человеческая надежность, вера в то, что в мире есть человек, который поможет тебе, это и составляет суть.
Если сэр Генри не появится через 15 минут, тропинку совсем затянет туманом. И вообще мы стоим слишком далеко. Это рискованно. Его могут настигнуть раньше нас. Тихо. Кажется, идет. Вот она.
Мистер Генри, с привидением, которое преследовало ваш род, покончено навсегда.
Фосфор. Странная смесь, совершенно без запаха. Состав преступления теперь налицо.
There seems to be no end to the extent of this cult and its devotion to a Gothic world where terror stalks and can only be met by the intellectual skill, the deductive powers of one man, Holmes. How do you explain it? I joined the party from among the 800-strong Sherlock Holmes Society of London, perhaps the most famous of all societies devoted to Holmes. At this Victorian-style country house weekend, the air was thick with Holmes quotes, puns, and in-jokes. After the rum antics of the American Sherlockians, could these genteel English buffs explain a very British creation?
This is Rosie.
Hello, Rosie.
Hello, how do you do?
This is Moriarty.
Moriarty?
Yes, the madman himself. Come on through.
Come on, Moriarty.
Come on.
Fellow Sherlockians, I invite you to join me in a toast to our guest, Tim. Tim.
Tim.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me. I hope I won't silence you all, but what I've come to do is a bit of research about what's happened to the Sherlock Holmes myth and why people like you are so involved in the stories. So really, that's all I want to talk about this evening.
I'm sure we shall all be glad to help you with that project.
Are we prepared to take exception to the word myth?
Yes.
Myth?
Oh dear, have I...
It's an extension of history.
You've started that.
Yes, it is a game. OK, dropping the pretense for a moment longer. Doyle wrote these stories. First of all, may I say at the outset, that it is a tribute to Doyle's genius as a fictional author that we are scarcely refer to him all evening. That's got Doyle out of the way. Right. Watson was a doctor in practice. Watson was writing about the cases of Sherlock Holmes. It would not really have been ethical for him to publish them directly. So he published them as if they were fiction, using Doyle as his literary agent, using Doyle's name.
You've elevated these people completely into the realm of reality, haven't you?
Of course, that's the whole point of the game, yes.
Somebody described it, didn't they, as the world of the nearly real.
Yes.
Our daughter is just at the stage of wondering about Father Christmas, and at the same time, being our daughter and steeped in all this, she's wondering about Sherlock Holmes. And we tell her, Sherlock Holmes is as real as Father Christmas. I think that describes it fairly well.
Well, yes, that may do for now, but Father Christmas is rather ephemeral for a 10-year-old cat, where Holmes may persist.
Hier? Ich bin der einzig Geschädigte.
Treten Sie vor. Was wollen Sie?
Ich bitte den Herrn Staatsanwalt, mich die Interessen Sherlock Holmes vertreten zu lassen.
Warum Sie?
Er ist mein Kind. Sherlock Holmes hat es nie gegeben. Sherlock Holmes hat nie gelebt. Sherlock Holmes ist ein Kind meiner Fantasie. Mein Name ist Conan Doyle.
Was? Der Schriftsteller Sir Arthur Conan Doyle?
Jawohl. Sie haben meinem Sherlock Holmes für kurze Zeit Leben und Gesicht gegeben. Das war großartig von Ihnen. Aber einen kleinen Schadenersatzanspruch muss ich doch stellen.
Bitte, verlangen Sie, was Sie wollen.
Lassen Sie mich Ihre Geschichte schreiben. Sie soll heißen, der Mann, der Sherlock Holmes war.
Einverstanden.
50-50?
Okay.
Die Sitzung ist geschlossen.
When you love Sherlock Holmes, you just love him as a whole. You don't see any drawbacks or bad aspects of this person. He's really so powerful and so... It's really difficult to explain. But he's so like a mastermind.
He's a perfectionist. And some of those, I think, have come to me. Like, I do things to perfection now. I used to just do things and just leave it there, but now I do it to perfection. I make sure it's fully done as best to my ability. And at school, I use logic instead of guesswork.
He's a gentleman. He has a sidekick called Watson. I have my own Watson, my wife Sheila, she's my Watson. He's honest. He was trustworthy. He did what was asked of him and accepted no reward.
Essentially, Holmes is trying to see patterns in the chaos of life. And I think that is something that you can apply to your own life and to your own understanding and to your own decisions about the future just as much as you can to a specific situation that you may be looking at.
This immensely complex character is chronicled in fiction by his trusty friend, Dr. Watson. The Watson we find in the writing is clearly no fool. The canon, so called by Holmes scholars, is the complete collection of the stories published between 1887 and 1927. The real creator, Arthur Conan Doyle, was as fascinating as his created character.
I used, as a student, to have an old professor, his name was Bell, who was extraordinarily quick at deductive work. He would look at the patient, he would hardly allow the patient to open his mouth, but he would make his diagnosis of the disease and also very often of the patient's nationality and occupation and other points entirely by his power of observation. So naturally I thought to myself, well, if a scientific man like Bell was to come into the detective business, he wouldn't do these things by chance. He'd get the thing by building it up scientifically.
Yes, it was the age of science. And in the Strand magazine of 1891, the stories sold on a large scale because for the first time, the Norwood commuter could buy cheap, popular literature with a picture on every page.
And what pictures?
Sidney Paget's drawings gave Holmes a romantic, dashing look. Conan Doyle's hawk-faced man was being taken over, but the combination suited the author well.
It helped Holmes make crime detection more respectable. This is from The Adventure of the Crooked Man. I see that you are professionally rather busy just now, said Holmes, glancing very keenly across at me. Yes, I've had a busy day, I answered. It may seem very foolish in your eyes, I added, but really, I don't know how you deduced it. Holmes chuckled to himself. I have the advantage of knowing your habits, my dear Watson, said he. When your round is a short one, you walk, and when it is a long one, you use a hansom. As I perceive that your boots, although used, are by no means dirty, I cannot doubt that you are at present busy enough to justify the hansom. Excellent, I cried. Elementary, said he.
In the case of Conan Doyle, he wasn't very good with plots, and most of the stories have little or no plot at all. They're a series of incidents, but put together with such skill and building each incident upon another that at the end of it, we think we've read a story with a plot, even though all we've really had is a series of interesting deductions.
There was one very large central room into which Ferguson led us. Here, in a huge old-fashioned fireplace with an iron screen behind it, dated 1670, there blazed and spluttered a splendid log fire. The room,
as I gazed round, was a most singular mixture of dates and of places. The half-panelled walls may well have belonged to the original yeoman
of the 17th century. They were ornamented, however, on the lower part by a line of well-chosen modern watercolours, while above, where yellow plaster took the place of oak, there was hung a fine collection of South American utensils and weapons, which had
That's
been...
important, weapons.
Weapons? Sounds important, doesn't it? Better put that out. You think that's important? Right, we'll see. And what about Holmes, the method that he uses? What about that? What do you know about that?
It was deduction.
Deduction. What does that mean?
Looking at things and thinking about them and not forgetting them, and if he finds something else he might match them like a jigsaw puzzle and see if they fit together.
And when they do, he solved the case, has he?
But he usually has to have more clues than two.
Most of these stories, he is clever enough not to use his narrative to tell us very much about his client. We think we're learning about the client, but really what we're learning about is Sherlock Holmes, which of course makes us even more interested when we read the next story to know more about Sherlock Holmes and his use of the serial character, which is so popular now with television because television companies like to lock their audience into tuning in again the following week. I think that Conan Doyle was one of the shrewdest people in knowing how much of each story should be devoted to something that's expendable and that the client we're not going to hear of again ever, and how much of it should be devoted to his two sustaining characters, Watson and Sherlock Holmes.
Přece jen mi toho Vrubelského bylo líto. Snad až příliš krutý trest.
Zemi, doktore.
A zač? Vždyť ten muž chtěl sloužit umění.
Nestačil na tuto službu.
Ale jak to má člověk poznat?
To se pozná podle toho, že přijde trest.
Ale někdy už bývá pozdě.
Ano, to už bývá obyčejně pozdě.
Stalo se něco, pane?
Ne, nikoli, pane.
Mohu pro vás něco udělat, pane?
Neděkuji, pane.
Dobrou noc, pane.
Dobrou noc, pane.
Now, my dear, your father's body was found in this very tomb without a mark on it. Evidently, a victim of the curse of Tutankhamun. Do you suspect foul play?
You mean he was killed by a chicken?
Wimpy, go and see a doctor.
But I am a doctor.
Well, get a second opinion. Now, we must look for clues.
My God, Holmes, you're I.
No, Wimpy, I'm me, you're I.
Magnifying glass makes your eye look huge.
It makes everything look huge, my dear. It's been a great comfort to me over the years.
221 Baker Street, first.
Very good, sir.
After you, my dear Holmes. By no means. I prefer that you precede me at all times. What a creature of habit you are. You've a magnificent brain, Moriarty. I admire it. I admire it so much, I'd like to present it pickled in alcohol to the London Medical Society. That would make an interesting exhibit.
I think the films actually go beyond badness. I know that sounds rather poncy thing to say, but those films have a period quality of their own, which makes it utterly irrelevant, whether they're...
I never had any dealings with the police, and I won't start now.
I'm not asking this for myself. Our country, England, is at stake. Get
Gavin was killed not by his own enemies, nor even mine, but by the enemies of England.
So that's it.
Yes, Kitty. The Nazis killed him. Help me to find out what Christopher means, and I promise the man who murdered Gavin shall pay for it. Think, Kitty. The cutthroats of the world menace us all.
I saw the films before I'd ever read the books. And it was from that my particular interest has always been on films and tracing them right back. And in fact, found to my astonishment, you know, that he's by far, he's represented more than any other person on films. There have been more films made about Sherlock Holmes than any other person. I mean, they're well over in the 200 feature films alone. Mm-hmm. And the first film made way back in 1900.
Who was in that?
One doesn't know. It was made for a bioscope, you know, one of these sort of what the butler saw type of machines.
This actor must be the only Holmes whose name we don't know. Just think of some of the great actors who've played Holmes. Arthur Wantner. Aileen Norwood. Basil Rathbone. Peter Cushing. Jeremy Brett.
Once or twice in my career. I feel I've done more real harm by my discovery of the criminal than ever he had done by his crime. But I've learned caution now. And I'd rather play tricks with the law than with my own conscience. Captain Crocker, sit down.
I've got your telegram and I've come at the hour you said. I heard you've been down to the office. There's no getting away from you, is there? Speak up, man. You can't stand there and play cat and mouse with me. What do you know?
Give him a cigar, Watson.
Please.
Sit down. Bite on that, Captain Crocker. And try not to let your nerves run away with you.
But it wasn't films or television that brought us the curly pipe. It was a stage performance by this man.
William Gillette.
Then
John Neville.
And of course, radio.
Carlton Hobbs. Tim Pigott-Smith. Professor Snow Tan Bun Yuen.
From the books and these various performances, we've each conjured up our image of
a great man.
Tady jste zde, Holmesi. Můj Holmesi. Díky. Jiné ženě by snad v tuto chvíli stačil kterýkoliv průměrný policista. Já však toužila po vás. Máte sebou housle?
Ovšem, nikdy se od nich neodlučuji.
Věděla jsem. Miluji muže, který dobře sevřít krk houslí. Ten mě aspoň pochopí v mé úzkosti.
Gadgets. Pills. A mallet. Aha! A stethoscope. The very thing. A compass. Going hiking, old boy?
It's for my nephew's birthday. If you must
Shh. What? Please. There it is again. I didn't hear anything. Very slight rumbling at infrequent intervals.
The crumbling remains of this 1918 Ebony production are a reminder of the enduring attraction of depicting Holmes on film. And the stories would run and run.
After all, our Norwood commuter would eventually have access to the cinema, and later on, the television. So, from being a detective, Holmes very soon became a byword, and later on, especially in America, an industry.
On the edge of a desert in New Mexico, John Bennett Shaw has his own 221B Baker Street. It houses the world's greatest collection of Sherlockian memorabilia. There are more than 10,000 books and pamphlets here, all about or touching on Holmes, including Sherlock Holmes Meets Annie Oakley and the gay bondage sexual adventures of Sherlock Holmes. John, who describes himself as a collector with the sensitivity of a vacuum cleaner, has more craft work, more editions in more languages than anyone else. 75 editions in 47 different languages of The Hound of the Baskervilles.
I think the Sherlock Holmes collecting world is baffling because I not only have books, but you have objects of art, you have crafts, you have games. I got a Sherlock Holmes potholder the other day from Minneapolis. And that's probably why people come and take pictures of my library. I have T-shirts. I have 75 T-shirts. I have ladies' panties with Holmes on and children's sleep suits. And in my freezer, I have 3 chocolate rabbits, which are Sherlock Holmes rabbits, called Inspector Hector. And one of them broke one time, and I ate it, and it's terrible chocolate, but they're artistic, of course. And then you go from the books and games and big things to this. This is one volume of a 5-volume Hound of the Baskerville, illustrated, the actual text. It's 7/8 of an inch high. This lady who did this also did 40 of the short stories. So you collect from big to little. I can't resist saying it's a delightful field to collect because you're collecting a great man who, if he didn't live, should have. The Sherlockian game, it's a great game. Yeah, I think it was Dorothy Sayers said it had to be played with the solemnity of a cricket match at Lord's. And it is a game, and my worry is I now and then meet Sherlockians who don't think it's a game, and I think there's something wrong with them.
I try and solve whatever crime I can. The trouble is, in this day and age, whereas Holmes 100 years ago would be called in by the Yard to help on cases, the police aren't very interested in having any sort of well-meaning do-gooder from outside, so I tend to work on quite small cases, the sort of things that the police aren't terribly interested in, like very petty theft. And what I've been working on recently is a device for trying to track down stolen bicycles.
It's not very regular signal at the moment. Right, that's better, yeah. Yes, straight ahead. Yeah.
Late at night, when everyone is sleeping.
I've noticed quite a lot of flaws in the writing, and especially one flaw where the tea is made and sent to Mr. Holmes, and it appears to come almost instantly, but really it takes much longer to make. And this is one mistake that Conan Doyle should have noticed, because this is a very obvious mistake that nobody can make tea as fast as that.
It's Sherlock and me, Sherlock and me, it's Sherlock and me, it's Sherlock and me.
The tray is now ready, and I walk up into Mr. Holmes' apartment. Because the kitchen is L-shaped, most likely anyway, she would walk towards the stairs in an orderly fashion, Because of old age, she would take her longer than a normal person. Now, the size of the stairs is proportional to the size of the stairs of Mr. Holmes's house. First of all, she would approach the stairs and she would walk up slowly, taking her time. In Baker Street, there are 19 steps, as I researched, so I have to go up 19 steps to reach the apartment of Mr. Holmes. So down 4. I now knock on the door of Mr. Holmes. He opens it, greets me. I place a tray down on the table and stop my watch. The watch reads 13 minutes approximately, but in the actual description of the passage it reads 2 minutes, and there we see Conan Doyle makes a message.
Sherlock and me, Sherlock and me, Sherlock and me, Sherlock and me, solving a mystery.
What an industry. Oh, I beg your pardon. Scholarship.
Well, the Adventures of Sherlock Holmes is the world's leading all-women's society devoted to Sherlock, Dr. Watson, and the Victorian age. And we were formed in the early 60s by a group of people from Albertus Magnus College, which is an all-women's college up in Connecticut. Evelyn here is our founding mother, and she went to that school along with a bunch of other young women who were kindred spirits.
Превращает город в дебри, где дам разводят по домам. Невозмутимые констебли, а этот лондонский туман. Дом перепутать так нетрудно, чужой карман и свой карман, причем бывает обоюдно. Быть не может, милорды, не делайте вид, что не помните Диккенса.
In the cold light of day, we know London no longer has fog and hansom cabs, but the buffs still cling to the romance of the Empire's capital, so vividly drawn in the stories. The actual history to be found in Holmes is, perhaps mercifully for escapists, shrouded in its own mists and fogs. Holmes himself realized that.
If we could fly out of that window hand in hand, hover over this great city, gently remove the roofs and peep in at the queer things that are going on, the strange coincidences, the plannings, the cross-purposes, the wonderful chains of events working through generations and leading to the most outré results, it would make all fiction, with its foreseen conclusions and conventionalities, most stale and unprofitable.
For most of us, fiction continues to be a powerful lens through which we make sense of the world. New York today, like Victorian London, is not without its gritty side. Tough, wild, violent. Americans may choose to believe in the continued existence of Holmes's London, but would anyone want to return to the real Victorian capital?
On a rocket tonight. We come down to 42nd Street, and it's 42nd Street all about love. God is love, and he loves New York City. How you doing? Yeah, I love you, I love you.
What's different about Holmes is the scale of the industry he's spawned. The latest offer for Americans is a murder mystery holiday in England. Val and Joe Liberto are about to leave New York on their $3,000 trip, but they'll see more fog here than in London. And confusion sometimes sets in between imaginary and actual locations, as it did here when they bumped into a New York cop.
The tour is going to be all involved around crime stories. Yeah, we're going to visit different places associated with different crimes.
The real thing or TV?
No, the real thing. The real thing. Like Baskerville Hall and Hound of the Baskervilles.
Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes and some of the, we're going to Scotland Yard. When we go to Sussex, we're supposed to try to solve a crime over the weekend there. And out of our group, we have to decide who the murderer is going to be. Right, dear?
Yeah.
221B Baker Street.
221B never existed, but this is where Holmes's rooms are supposed to have been.
Watson and Sherlock Holmes, they were going to live at 221B Baker Street. Do you know, for years before that, there was no plaque, there was no link at all, except a yellow front door. I wonder if any of you can see the link between the yellow front door and Sherlock Holmes.
Yellow?
A lemon entry, you see, that was the yellow front door. That's a little subtle, maybe, for you, Jeff, but that's what was over there, everybody. He lived quite contentedly with his friend, Dr. Watson, and the house being, as I say, right over here. Any other little questions, anybody? Do please fire away, because, as I always say, if I don't know the answer, I'll make something up, and you'll never know the difference anyway, with a bit of luck. No, any points you want to...
When did Conan Doyle die?
Conan Doyle or Sherlock Holmes? Conan Doyle, as you said, Katie, yeah, of course. Yes, Conan Doyle, good question. He died in 1930. I think it was, yes. It was 1930, 2 years before another great prolific writer of that period, another great crime writer, Edgar Wallace, died in 1932. Both, funnily enough, buried not that far west of London. Edgar Wallace out at a place called Bourne End in Buckinghamshire, and Conan Doyle himself out in the New Forest, Minstead, which is in Hampshire. I'm sorry, I did already mention that. I think maybe earlier on I may have said, sorry, it was Hampshire. But for now, everybody, if we can contemplate making our way across the road there, let's see if we can get our way along here. Thanks very much. Get just beyond the bus stop, my party, if we could. I want to get in a position so you're facing the house. If you want then to get a photograph at all of the society, as it is now, the Abbey National Building Society, please do. Pretty good, I think. Yes, we're right across the road. I say, if you want to get a photograph, it's not a particularly attractive looking building, is it, really?
So what do you think about our trip so far?
I can't believe people are really coming to see that plaque.
Do you know Christine took a picture of the little plaque on the building? I mean, really, how funny. But it's nothing like back then. I mean, there's not even any fog.
Yeah, the only fog on the trip was at the murder mystery dinner at the Sherlock Holmes Hotel. This must be the most packaged form of enjoying Holmes. The tourists were served dishes like suicide soup and accessories to the crime by a demoted Moriarty, Holmes and Watson. Guest speakers mingled with the diners, including an ex-chairman of the London Holmes Society.
Get their cameras out.
Cameras out.
This is it. You know, to them it's very real.
Do you find that Americans are more inclined to do that, or that people from all
Americans are
countries?
very inclined to do that.
Americans are also inclined to get excited by playing a solve the murder game.
The first night.
Just one.
Just one, only one body. And we had to investigate that. And the second night we had 3 bodies. That was harder. We had no suspects left.
The real Victorian police had plenty of suspects, but too few arrests or convictions. Behind the fictional London, reality was much more alarming.
If you were a Norwood commuter, and Conan Doyle himself was, you might choose to ignore that over 1/3 of all Londoners lived in abject poverty. But they did. In a survey in 1889 by Charles Booth, a Liverpool shipping magnate, the figures were confirmed. Another report speaks of 7 people living in an underground cellar with a little dead child in the corner. Did such grisly conditions contribute to the vast underbelly of crime, which Holmes confessed was his main stimulus? Holmes buffs constantly compare the canon to reality.
If you do compare the stories with reality, you wonder whether such a world as this could have produced our hero. Is Holmes a man we should admire, or indeed respect?
Come on. I have to pay the manager Monday.
Holmes appears to enjoy his forays into the seamier side of life. But what should we make of his frequent depressive moods and his fondness for cocaine?
Let go. Take your hands off. Holmes. What on earth are you doing in this den?
Like you're going about my business. You have a cab outside.
Yeah.
I pray send him home. He looks too limp to get into any kind of mischief. I'll see you in 5 minutes. Hi, sir.
I'm certainly surprised to see you in that place.
I suppose you think I've added opium to smoking to all my other little weaknesses.
I merely said I was surprised to see you there.
I would contend that there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that Holmes was an addict of cocaine. And I think one can glean enough for a psychiatric profile. In the yellow face, Watson alleges that, I quote, save for the occasional, and I would repeat, occasional use of cocaine, he, Holmes, had no vices, and he only turned to the drug as a protest against the monotony of existence when cases were scanty and the papers uninteresting, unquote.
Yet here, on the first page of the second story, The Sign of 4, what do we find? Sherlock Holmes took his bottle from the corner of the mantelpiece and his hypodermic syringe from its neat morocco case. With his long, white, nervous fingers, he adjusted the delicate needle and rolled back his left shirt cuff. For some little time, his eyes rested thoughtfully upon the sinewy forearm and wrist, all dotted and scarred with innumerable puncture marks. Finally, he thrust the sharp point home, pressed down the tiny piston, and sank back into the velvet-lined armchair with a long sigh of satisfaction. Would you care to try it? He said.
his aversion to women and his disinclination to form new friendships were both typical of his unemotional character, unquote. And I think it's important to pause a moment at this point and discuss the possibility that Holmes was a homosexual.
Most of the surface is damp. However, there are raised portions that are dry. There is also a thin film of ice.
Watson was, as we all know, his stooge, his sounding board for his theories, and he might be termed, in psychological terms, his alter ego.
I don't see where this is getting us. What does it tell us about the interior?
Patience, old puff. What else?
To follow up this sexual aspect of Holmes, which is obviously important, I am of the conviction that he was essentially asexual, that he was too wrapped up in himself, he was too narcissistic, too egocentric to have any time or emotional give and take for any other person. In these people, there is no elasticity, no provision for any give and take.
Mistři, nějaká paní Abrahamová. Nestrhávejte mne ze strmé cesty umění. Žádá naléhavě o pomoc. Odpírám. Právě odhalím.
Now, the important thing is, from a psychiatric standpoint, that this indicates what we call, in clinical terms, psychomotor retardation.
Holmes.
The Holmes phenomenon is a mixture of levity and owlishness. But underneath it all is an incoherent longing to adopt a hero as a leader and make him real. It's said that Hitler had a Sherlock Holmes movie to while away the last hours in the bunker. Roosevelt was a confirmed fan and a member of the Baker Street Irregulars.
The Case of Sherlock Holmes. I started with this image, this cliché, but it doesn't even hint at the monstrous growth of the Holmes cult.
So, to dine on Holmes in Herefordshire is really, in the context of all this, a very small accomplishment. To touch Holmes at any point is to touch the hem of a vast, seamless garment. But what, exactly? Fun, a game, escapism, an industry, or something more? A reliable companion, an all-knowing protector, a final judge. A joke.
My belief is that we all need to identify with someone who is omnipotent. And there can be no doubt that Conan Doyle drew this character of omnipotence, a man of superior intelligence who was capable of working and working and working, not only working, but of bringing all his endeavors to a satisfactory conclusion. He never failed, and heaven knows this is what we'd all like, never to fail.
Most people's favourite passage in the canon, perhaps, is the East Wind speech. This is at the end of his last bow. Holmes, by devious methods, has just succeeded in trapping the dangerous German master spy von Bork, and he and Watson have got this fellow tied up and trussed in a cottage on the coast at Harwich, ready to transfer him into custody, and they go out onto the terrace overlooking the harbour for what Holmes says is probably the last quiet talk we shall ever have, and chronologically speaking, since it's the latest story, the very last words we hear Holmes utter then are, he looks out over the channel and he says, "There's an east wind coming, Watson." "I think not, Holmes. It is very warm." Good old Watson. You are the one fixed point in a changing age. But there's an east wind coming all the same. Such a wind as never blew upon England yet. It will be cold and bitter, Watson, and a great many of us may wither before its blast.
This girl merits our deepest gratitude. Our country is honored in having had such loyalty and devotion.
We'll remember. Holmes, I don't know how we'll ever thank you.
Don't try, it isn't necessary.
I'll be with you in a minute, Holmes. I'll just see that she's taken care of. I always did think that chap was an imposter. Barham was a good fellow. Played wing three-quarter for the school. What a lovely morning, Holmes.
There's an east wind coming, Watson.
No, I don't think so. Looks like another warm day.
Good old Watson. The one fixed point in a changing age. There's an east wind coming all the same. Such a wind has never blew on England yet. It will be cold and bitter, Watson. And a good many of us may wither before its blast. But it's God's own wind nonetheless. And a greener, better, stronger land will lie in the sunshine when the storm is cleared.
The past that is preferable to the real past is, for Sherlock Holmes scholars, all part of the game. The actual past, like the actual present, stripped of our daydreams and fantasies, our willingness to deceive ourselves. It's not much of a game. This is Liverpool. It's a poor city. It's a desperate place. It was in its time as rich and powerful as Holmes's London, as rich as any city anywhere in the empire. But now, in the European order that has resulted from that cruel east wind, it's as bad as Naples, bottom of the heap. So to find this here, and to accept its invitation to go in, is to put the Holmes game to the test.
But really, it's a hard decision, but in reverse order, I think, can you hold your numbers up, Jen, so I can make sure I don't get the wrong one? In reverse order, number 3, I made number 6. Congratulations, Reg, and it's nice to meet a Scouser who's proud of his heritage. Thank you very much.
Number 8, who wins his Super Sherlock Holmes trophy. Right, so let's see a look at that. And the first prize, this is actually a Sherlock Holmes dog costume, coupled with, get this folks, and it's the only way this guy's going to get out of Liverpool, an away day trip to Baker Street. All paid for. So if you'd like to compare